It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble, 30 minutes of time-wasting fun. We're talking about something fun today. It's not fun in the moment, but it's fun after the fact, right? When you can look back at it now. But getting fired from a job, really. I mean, it's embarrassing, right? And it's actually, I think the first time that it happens to you, because, you're listening to somebody who's been fired quite a few times. The first time that it happens, I think it also depends on your life or your living situation or where you are in your life. Like, if you're a teenager, like I was, and you're living at home with your parents, you don't really have any expenses or anything. Not a big deal. But embarrassing as hell when you basically either have to make up some big, fantastical story about why you quit, even though you didn't complain about the job ever. Instead, you're actually telling everybody how great it is. So why would you then suddenly quit? And then you've got to keep up that story, right? You got to convince people that it was actually you that quit and not that they canned your ass. Right? And then there's the embarrassment of it. Are you going to tell your friends that you were actually fired? Now, fast forward all these, I was first fired when I was 17. I was a teenager. So I'm going to talk about these stories on the show today, of course. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's devastating. Now, I was also fired when I was, living on my own and I had my own house. And so that was also kind of like, ooh, shit, right? Like, that's going to be a problem. So I understand that as well. But again, the stories behind the firing, those are always the interesting, because there's more than one side to it, right? There's your side as to how you see things. And then there's the side of the employer, obviously, that saw things a different way. So I'm going to walk through at least the memorable firings. And you have to remember, I've done pretty well for myself considering I don't even remember who it was. It was either somebody at a job. I don't think it was a friend. I think it was somebody it was like a former coworker after I was fired who basically just kind of said to me, you know what? You should just be your own boss. You should just run the show. You're just not cut out for working for somebody because, you got a strong personality, you've got the strong ideas, you've got, all that kind of stuff that it's hard for you to conform to a job where, somebody else is setting the expectations for you when you have really strong opinions and even just a different work ethic. And my team can attest to that here. Our group has worked together for 20 years. And so, we have different, we just know how each other works. And so it's not, I was going to say it's unconventional. I guess it's unconventional by today's office standards. For us, it's not though. For somebody to walk by and smack your ass here is no big deal. Or for me to call, say to Bonnie during a meeting, no, you stupid bitch. We know that it's all in love because here's the thing. Bonnie's 70-something years old. She doesn't need to be working right now. So the fact that she's still here after all these years, and, she hosted me for my birthday, her and her husband, Mike, so it's not like it's this hostile environment. I've been to some of the, Suzanne, I've been to their kids' weddings. I've been to teams, we're a very close group here. But anyway, so yes, when I was an employee of other people at different businesses, it didn't always go well. But the thing with me, though, is I always would start out lovable. I would always start out that I was kind of the favorite, right? My energy, my sense of humor. But then once you kind of get into that, everybody kind of puts out that front for the first few days, week, couple weeks, and then the real you comes out, right? You know what I'm talking about. And so that's when that intensity, right? When push comes to shove, or when, there's intense pressure, or there's a deadline looming, or working with people who are just difficult to work with. That's when I'm just kind of like, I can't deal with idiots. I can't deal with, just certain types of people. The valley girl who just comes in and talks about her dates and just keep it down. We don't need to hear it. And that annoys the hell out of me. So anyway, I'm going to talk about a few of my various firings from my working career, my working life on the Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
JB here on the Scribble. I think of firing as a badge of honor. I don't know. I just think that, see, I'm also such a strong personality that I think my mom said to me one time, your mouth is going to get you in trouble. I knew your mouth would get you in trouble one day. And for me, it's because I was either, standing up for myself or, not being treated like garbage, like an employee who isn't, respected for their knowledge. And you have to remember too, as a writer, as a professional writer, I'm a trained journalist and, I majored in communications and everything in school. So that's also a type of role where, you'll have a company that says, okay, we want a corporate writer. Oh, okay, we need a copywriter. But they don't know exactly how a writer works because they've never had that before. So, being a writer isn't like flicking on a switch. It's not like you just come in and sit down at your desk at 8:30 or 9 o'clock and go, okay, I'm writing now. It's in a creative writing environment. That's just, no, you need to kind of get into a groove. You need to kind of, relax and kind of settle in, which is why, even when we were producing our radio shows, our syndicated shows years ago, we didn't start the day until about 11 o'clock. I think our meetings, I don't know that we ever had a meeting, depending on what it was. We were doing entertainment news at the same time. So, if a story broke, well, then yes, we were up at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. But on a regular Monday meeting, it was never, I think, before 11 o'clock. We just never, we're creative. All of us took the same program in school, actually. Well, not Suzanne and Tim, but the rest of us, like Bonnie took the same program, and Jeannie, our producer, and, we were all in school. So, so a writing job is just kind of different. I've always worked really well in the evenings and at night. So I prefer daytime being out and about doing things, and then the evening is when I can really kind of focus. And that's when I was writing my newspaper column for, 20 years for a newspaper. It was generally done at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I don't know. I just write better then. And we were fortunate, Bonnie and I worked at a publishing company where she's our accountant now, but she was the controller there. Her attitude was, I don't care how you guys get the work done. Just get it done. As long as our clients aren't calling us. We were doing trade magazines, so we had different associations and things. But she said, as long as they're not, calling me and tearing a strip off me, I don't care how you guys get the work done. Work on Sundays, work here at midnight, come in at noon, whatever. As long as it's, as long as the work's done, I don't care. And so that's how we've kind of run our office. Now, again, it's a little bit different in the news world. There are certain things that we have to, get done at certain times or jump in at unconventional times. But yeah, so, when a company hires you as a writer, and it's not a 40-hour week because, you're either going to be waiting for information from other departments or you're waiting on an executive to read something over and clear it or whatever it is. So there's a lot of sitting around and waiting for people. And I think at the same time, to bring in a seasoned writer, such as myself, I've got a shit ton of questions that they just aren't necessarily expecting or hadn't thought of. It's one thing to hire somebody right out of school who's never done the job and they're just kind of like, oh, okay, but for me, I've kind of got expectations as well. And that's what my last couple of office jobs were. Even though I started my own company, I would still do, contract work for other businesses and things. I was in the media. I was in the newspaper every week in Winnipeg. So I would have companies reach out and ask me to, a major trucking company, I hosted a podcast for them. There was one business it was a business magazine. It was about the city, I think, that wanted me to help produce, write profiles for and interview a bunch of the business leaders in the city. And so I put that out for like a tourism book or something. So I've done work for people, but again, that's the thing is it's an agency there was one agency where they had told me that they've gone through 3 copywriters in the last 6 months. And I was kind of like, red flag, don't tell a professional trained writer, 20 some years in the business. You don't tell me that you keep losing copywriters because that to me says there's something wrong with you. When you say lose them, that I hear that as they walked away. The writer said, no thanks. So I come in. See, when you know that too, you have a bit of leverage, right? At that point, you can kind of go and say, all right, well, I think it's going to cost them a little more to have me do this. And they did. They paid me, this isn't about firing, but I wasn't fired from it. I think they paid me $6,000 to write a few profiles, very short profiles, on about 10 or 15 businesses. It was and it was all fluff stuff, right? Like, so there wasn't any investigative reporting. It was all just puff pieces as a business profile, show the, and and I did it. They needed it. They were really late because, again, they were behind on this project, and I had known one of the guys at the tourism board. Coincidentally, he worked at the newspaper. He did my video series. So through a roundabout way, I guess my name had come up, and so they came and offered me this thing, and they needed it done though, because they're falling behind. We had a meeting, I think it was the beginning of December. They were scheduling everything and doing all this stuff. They wanted one of their account representatives to be on like every call with me when I was doing these phone interviews with people. And I said, no. Here's the thing. You guys came to me to do this. So if you don't trust me, that's your issue. It's your client that wanted me to do this project. So let's get that straight right there. Secondly, I've been doing this a long time. You can, Google my name. You can see the celebrity interviews, red carpets, and professionalism is not a concern here. If, I don't do that. I'm not being monitored. If that's the case, fuck off. And you can tell your client he refused. And then I will tell your client, because I have his phone number, I'll tell him why I refused. And you guys look bad, not me. You're the one with the contract, and you're the one that's potentially going to fail their project for them because you've waited too long, you don't have writers. Because now you guys have told me a bunch of stuff in a meeting that I can now go back to dude and say, radar, red alert. And that's how you get the upper hand in business relationships. Maybe we should change the subject of this episode. It shouldn't be about the firing. It should be how to get your way in business. All right, so let me get onto the firing thing. But anyway, yeah. So let me just finish that story though. $6,000 they paid me. I ended up having to work through Christmas, which was kind of a shitty thing. So they wanted me to bang out all these interviews. They even scheduled a bunch of them for outside of the time frame that I was available. I was actually in Mexico leading up to Christmas. So this is, I think, about the week before Christmas. And they booked me like 2 or 3 days of interviews, and I just said, this wasn't even on the schedule. So then I go to the owner of the company. I'm like, look, buddy, I'm coming in to do you guys a favor, and this is what you're doing. You're not scheduling things properly, And so then I ended up having to write a bunch of them over the Christmas break, and then they needed it at the beginning of January. But the amount of work that I did, I mean, it was not even 10 hours. I'm trying to think even. I remember sitting with my laptop in our hotel. My husband was kind of like, oh, whatever. So he went to the gym, and and that's 2 hours because he's a fitness model and, bodybuilder and things. So I'm like, good, 2 hours, I can bang out at least 3 of these things. Because again, they're like 200 word profiles. It's not like we were doing 6-page, reports. These were all, I don't even know that there was a full page write-up about a company. And so, yeah, I think it was not even, 10 hours of work. The interviews, obviously, 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Some of them were kind of chatty. And, it's also networking as well, right? I mean, I'm getting to meet millionaires and, successful business owners. So I'll chat with them. But yeah, not even like 10 hours of work. And yeah, it was $6,000. Yeah. So let's talk about firing. No, we got to go to a break already. Look at that. We are almost halfway through the show, and I haven't even started talking about getting fired yet. Wouldn't it be funny if I was fired for talking too much at a job place? But we'll be right back on the Scribble.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
JB here on the Scribble. they were just laughing during the break, and I said, what are you gonna do? Everyone long, you're gonna fire me? Okay, go for it. Who's the one who signs the checks? Who's the one who's got the authority here? So let me talk about my first time that I was fired. As I said, I was 17 years old. I was working at Red Lobster, and that location has since closed, and I'm not identifying a specific location. Even if I did, I'm going to be naming first names of people. So a bunch of my classmates in high school worked at this restaurant, and then a couple kids that were in higher grades. And then they graduated, and then so I was working there from the time I was 16 to the 17-year age, and to the age of 16 or 17. And I worked in the kitchen. Now, or in the alley, it was called. That's where you dress the plates and you kind of prep them. I wasn't cooking and I wasn't serving. I was just that middle person who would hand the plates or the trays to the servers, and then I would dress them, make sure they've got the garnish and the temperature of the food is correct and things like that. So I come in there because a bunch of my, classmates and people I went to school with were already working there and, recommended me. And so I ended up meeting the kitchen manager, Sean, who is actually still a big restaurant association guy. All these years later, he's kind of moved out of the actual restaurants and now is part of an association. Young, kind of, cool guy. As I said, I was in my late teens. He was probably not much. I think he was probably mid-20s, I would say, maybe late 20s, not very old. He and his wife had just had a son, so I remember him kind of being excited about that. But it was still just kind of a young crew, right? Red Lobster, believe it or not, was kind of trendy, and it was a cool place to work when you were a teenager, and it was, decent money. So this is around the time, by the way, this is 1999 and 2000. So cell phones weren't really a thing. Digital cameras were just becoming a thing. So you remember those? So the digital camera, right? It's like a camera, and then it had the little screen on the back, so you would see the picture right away. So I was the first one to ever get a digital camera amongst the group there. So I had this, and I would, we'd do a bunch of pictures, in the kitchen and just around the restaurant, goofing off, before and after work. Nothing like out in the dining room in front of the customers, nothing like that. But just, in the slow period in the afternoon or in the kitchen when we're just, goofing around or when we're cleaning up at the end of the night. So I'd take a bunch of pictures, and then I made a website. I called it Goonies Online, and this was back when you could get a different domain or like a different extension. So I think it was gooniesonline.8k.com. So it wasn't like an actual .com, but it was kind of an extension of one, but it was still free. So that's how I was able to. So I had like gooniesonline.8k.com, I think it was. And I would just go at the end of the night, I'd go home, I would upload the pictures that, I took of the staff, of us just goofing around. And I would do a little caption, right? Everybody had different nicknames and things. So that was kind of the fun thing, is that it kind of became like a social media post in a sense, although it wasn't really, people couldn't really comment. It was more just like a viewing gallery. And again, this was before the days of social media. Anyway, so I would just post, oh, here's a picture of, Sean in the alley, and here's a picture of so-and-so, and here's a picture of so-and-so. And that was fine. So then we had this manager come in. Her name was Laura, and so Sean, the kitchen manager, ended up getting moved to be the beverage manager. And then this chick, Laura, comes in, and she's the kitchen manager. Obviously, when she comes in, she's got to win over the staff of basically teenage and early 20-year-old males. So she's kind of, she's short. She was a little bit heavier, and she had a shrill voice. So that, and I'm not making fun. I'm just saying this is how she was viewed by the staff. This is how people talked about her. And so that alone right there, right? So she had to kind of try to be cool then, right? Like she had to kind of be one of the guys. Nowadays, obviously in the workplace, it's like, no. Now the guys have to conform to her, right? You wouldn't be able to kind of make her have to try to win you over as a manager. Well, maybe you would, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so she would, try to be, goofy and silly and whatever. And so one time she was standing beside me in the kitchen, and I said something or I did something, and she went and like squeezed my arm as a joke, but squeezed it really hard. I mean, I'm kind of a scrawny guy. So for somebody to squeeze my arm, and then also maybe she didn't realize it, but she was digging her nails into my arm. So in the moment I was kind of laughing or whatever. And then I ended up going to the bathroom, and I looked, and I had quite a bruise on my arm. And there was just something about that where I kind of thought, she just hurt me in a sense. So it wasn't an assault where she was, but I guess technically that is an assault because she's touching me. But again, like I said, in our office earlier, like Bonnie can walk by and slap my ass, not a big deal. But if you don't have that relationship with somebody, right? If you haven't kind of made it okay, then it's a problem, right? So it bothered me because I thought, oh my God, she's, hurt me. She's injured me on the job. So Red Lobster, like most businesses, had one of those, confidential 800 numbers, right? That you could call and, everything's kind of off the record or whatever. Here's the thing though. If I call there, even if I disguise my voice or whatever it is, right? And I go and say, she grabbed my arm and squeezed it and I have a bruise. Obviously that's going to get back to her. And obviously the dots are going to be connected, and it's like, oh, Jeremy called the snitch line on me. Okay, great. So the restaurant manager, now his name is Rick, and he was banging a couple of the servers that we knew, and he was married and had a kid or two. He wasn't fond of the gays. Just wasn't fond of the gays. And, kind of would make comments as such. Again, we're going back to 1999, 2000. It happened in workplaces. Yeah. And, maybe he was allowed to get away with it, right? Because he's the restaurant manager and he's the one in charge. So obviously the 800 number, right, from the corporate office, I think they were in Florida, right? Was Red Lobster, Darden Restaurants, I think was in Florida. So I called the 800 number, the snitch line, not thinking, how could I get in trouble for this? How could I possibly get in trouble? This phone number is set up so that I can feel safe I can have protection, that I do have support. So a day or two later, Laura, the manager who assaulted me, calls me into the office. And I was just like, here we go. And so she just is like, you could have said something to me. I'm sorry, that wasn't whatever. And then I thought, okay, I'm on the radar now. I'm on the radar. I'm marked. I am marked. And within about a week or two, I was then brought in to the restaurant by, I was coming in, I guess, for a shift or whatever. And then Rick, the general manager, had called me over. Now, this is the thing at the Red Lobster location that I was at, was that when you would have a performance review or if we were getting in trouble, there was one table kind of at the front in the corner of the restaurant where it really was out of the way that nobody would even really know that you were sitting there unless you kind of went to that area. But that was where you would go, right? They would also do that with if you're coming in for a job interview or something, just because it is out of the way. There was really no office space or anything that they could like take you somewhere. And so I remember I came in for the shift, and all of a sudden, Rick wants to see me, at the table, and I was like, Now here I thought that it was going to be something with the Laura thing, right? Like the assault, the, bruised or whatever. Turns out, and this is one of those, maybe it was like a technicality, they were looking for something, they found something, was that they had printed out pictures from the Goonies online website. And the technicality or the, whatever was that this is, it's a breach of privacy, breach of security. You're posting publicly, like, the inside of our kitchen and, our team and blah, blah, blah. And so, see, when you're in a situation like this, this is the thing, and I didn't realize it at the time. I feel like you're fighting for your life, right? Like, I feel that there's something that could salvage my job. The reality is, it's a done deal already, right? He set this meeting up. He spent the last day or two going through whoever. We didn't have an HR department there, right? So he's going through the corporate office or whatever, going, hey, we're terminating this guy. Look at what he's got. So it's in the works. So nothing that I'm going to be able to say in that meeting with Rick is going to save the job, right? But I don't know that as a teenager. So he showed me, and I said, but Rick, like, everyone is posing for the pictures. And everybody is aware of this website. Like, everybody, the manager, Sean, the kitchen manager, and now turned beverage manager, and then Nikki, the dining room manager, and even Laura, the one who assaulted me, are all posing and being silly for these pictures. So if the managers are going along with it and the managers don't have an issue, what exactly is the problem, right? Because this is a simple fix. Oh, hey, you know what, Jeremy? Heard about this website, whatever. Can you just, you got to scrap it. Can you just knock it off? Problem solved. Problem solved, easy fix. But again, so you got the homophobe bigot, right? You got the kitchen chick who's now embarrassed or, whatever that she got in shit. And, suddenly I'm the troublemaker. Yeah. So I was turfed from a lobster. And so this is the embarrassing thing, right? Because now I went home from school and then I take the bus to Red Lobster. So my mom had just seen me off, right? And it's this, like, oh shit, now I've got to go home. If I was smart, or not smart, but if I was thinking about it, I could have spent the evening out, right? There's a mall right across the street or something, right? I could have hung out for a few hours and just killed time and then go home when my shift would have been over. But I didn't. Instead, I just went home and I did that excuse like everybody seems to do when you're embarrassed was I quit. And, obviously she's taken off guard. My mom is taken off guard by this because what? I mean, like, you love that place. You're, so much fun and you're having this laugh and the staff always talks about you and whatever. And that's where I just went and said, like, no, the restaurant manager, has been harassing me and picking on me. I said, like, I showed my arm. I said, like, I had this, bruise from the manager, grabbing me. And so it just became too much. And, I started complaining and I just can't deal with it. I'm not working in a place like that. So it was good that I had the bruise, right? That I could show that. I could have just made another one if it had faded. But, I said no, like, she was goofing around, whatever. And I called the 800 number and then they just made it difficult for me for the past, week and a half or whatever. So that's that. And, the severity of it, like I said, 17 years old, living at home, no real business, no expenses at all because I was a kid, right? I didn't have a cell phone or anything like that at the time. So any money that I was making was just spending money, right? And that was the first time that I was fired. So again, fired for doing something wrong, technically, so they say, but it was fine until I kind of, reported being assaulted. So, was I posting pictures from in the kitchen? And yeah, but I mean, it's not like I was going and putting pictures of, the dirty floor. Look how messy this place is, whatever. No, it was just people goofing around, right? Think about that now when you've got people with their cell phones out in the kitchen and, so that's basically what it was, but just a digital camera. And it was put onto a website, not a social media page. Same thing? Maybe. All right, so we're going to take a break. And then I'm going to tell you about getting fired from the luggage store coming up on the Scribble right after this.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
JB here on the Scribble. All right, so I worked in a mall, and so in between graduating high school and then going to college for that journalism degree that I talked about, I obviously wanted to work and make as much money as I can, right? Smart kind of a move. So I worked at Bootlegger, which is a clothing store, kind of a trendy clothing store back in the day. I don't even know if it's still open anymore. But I worked there in the mornings, so I would work from, let's say, 10 to 4 or 5. And then I would have a break, and then I worked at a store called Bentley. So Canadians might know it as the luggage store, the backpack store. So Bootlegger was, again, one of those situations like Red Lobster, where it was a younger staff, hip, trendy, fashionable. I was a good salesperson because, I'm a talker, and it's like, I don't know really anything about fashion. So, but, you just have a good time and good sense of humor, and people trust you, and they buy stuff and whatever it was. We weren't on, I don't think it was commission, but maybe it was commission. I can't remember. But I just remember, come in, store manager, her name was Karen, not that kind of a Karen. She was really cool. And just, it was just I was sort of a recommendation with somebody that I had worked with in a previous job. I've talked about it before. I was assistant manager at Party City. That store ended up closing, so I wasn't fired from there. Haha. And so one of the managers was working at Bootlegger. She brings me in. Oh, I've got this friend, Jeremy. He's all great. So I meet Karen. We have a great time. I'm working there. So then, in the evenings, so Bentley, the luggage store, one of my friends who I had known from the bar, from the gay bar. His name was Les. And he was the store manager of Bentley. Now, Bentley was a very small store. It was basically like the size of a shoebox. And there was really very little room. Obviously, these suitcases are big, right? So it was just, and purses were on one wall, but not very much room to walk. You kind of had each outside wall of the store, the two sides, full of suitcases. The middle was even more suitcases and very narrow pathways. I honestly think that if you were to try to go through there with a wheelchair, I'm not even sure that the aisles were wide enough, which is probably either a fire code violation or an accessibility bylaw or, law problem. But anyway, so the store was so very boring because obviously a luggage store is not a place like Bootlegger where you're going to try new jeans and you can get accessories and hey, let's go try over this one. No. And it wasn't like Party City where it's excitement of you're planning a party, let's go. You're looking at fucking luggage. So there were generally two of us working in the store at one time in the evening. And so it was me, and depending on when the store manager left, he would kind of work the daytime, but I would start at 5. So maybe sometimes he would still be working until maybe 5:30 or 6, maybe 6:30. And then there was another guy named Carl who was one of Les's friends. See, that's how it was easy to get jobs back then. I've got a friend. Okay, he's cool. All right, well, let's do it. So at Bentley, we really, in the evening, would kind of just stand at the counter, stand up against the wall. Again, before the days of cell phones, so not like we could sit there, play. But, we brought in a little radio. That was we would listen to the radio. There really wasn't anything to do. When a customer would come in, we actually got so comfortable just standing around doing nothing that it ended up being annoying, where it's like, hey, you get the next one. Like, I don't even want to. You'd think that it would be the opposite, where we'd be fighting over each other or fighting each other to get to the next customer. Oh, I want the next one. We're like, yeah, I don't know. I'll just stand here. And again, we were being paid probably like $6 an hour. I think the store manager said that he was making $10 an hour at the time. So, I mean, there you go, right? But again, we're going back to the early 2000s, 2002 or 2003, perhaps. So it's the three gay guys basically working at the luggage store. And then there was a woman, I can't remember her name. Kim, I think was her name. And she was kind of like a swing shift kind of. Actually, there were two women. There was Kim and there was, I can't remember her name. I just remember she had glasses and curly red hair. Not Daphne, something like that. Shoal. Shale. Something like Shoal or Shale. I remember it was a kind of a weird name. And she would work weekends or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, there were, I guess, 5 of us at the store. So, when you work for a corporate company, there's always, there's the head office. Sometimes back in the day, you'd have a mystery shopper who would come in, right, and pretend to be a customer, and then they'd grade you on the service, which was always annoying. So we'd be tipped off when the head office or the district manager, somebody would be coming in. So the woman had come in, and again, the store is so small, it's not like she's going to spend all day there. She's going to come in, she's going to walk around, she's going to go and say, move this design, or, move this over here, this should be stacked this way, do it that way. That was really the extent of it. So so I said there was the outside walls and then there was kind of displays in the middle. So they were called a bunk. So it was purses or something on the top and then perhaps smaller suitcases on the bottom shelf. But the bunk, the top, was more of like a bucket or like, it was kind of a... So one of them, or maybe two of them, the wheels were broken and they didn't quite roll, they didn't quite move, which was fine because they really didn't anyway. They were just there. But I think it either had kind of like a wobble or there was kind of something to it. And so she had just done the walkthrough and then she kind of looked at me and she was like, she told me to fix the broken wheel on this thing. And I just looked at her and I said, show me the money. As though I was a maintenance person, my job is to like sell purses. So you're wanting me to all of a sudden go and flip this over and start drilling and fixing wheels and whatever? Like, I don't know. Now, in hindsight, I was kind of like, yeah, that might be a staff kind of a role. But at the time, I just thought, for the shit that you're paying me, now you're wanting me to do maintenance. Like, get me a fucking drill. Get me whatever. I don't know what I'm supposed to, so I did. I said, show me the money. And it didn't go over well. She kind of just was looked at me. Basically, I refused, to do it in a sense. And so she ended up, leaving. And then this is the thing when you work with a friend or work for a friend. So then my friend Les ended up having to basically come and fire me because, I kind of got lippy with the district manager. But again, it was sort of like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm putting myself now in Party City going, I mean, if we had an issue with something breaking, I mean, was it my responsibility to fix it as an assistant manager? Or, I don't know, right? I mean, that's something where, it could be involving, power tools or cutting, new wood or something like that. I don't know what's broken on it. I mean, I'm not going to start flipping things over, and now I'm working at Home Depot and I'm a woodworker, and so yeah, I just kind of said, nah, I'm not doing it. You pay me, $6 an hour, $7 an hour. I'm not a maintenance guy. Sorry. So that's the luggage firing. But I still had my other job in the mall anyway, right? So I was able to, either take on more shifts or whatever it was. But so those were my first 2 firings. The email address, if you have a firing story, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. Now, one of the other ones was when I stood up and shared an opinion. Here's the irony. It was at a newspaper about the opinions. Yeah. That story's coming up on the Scribble right after this.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com. for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
JB here on the Scribble, talking about my firings, which, I almost kind of wish people had those big dramatic firings as they do now, right? Where on the way out, you go and just knock down shelves and throw, I didn't have anything good like that. I went out mostly maturely. So it was always my dream as a kid to be a newspaper reporter. My high school was right across the street from our big daily newspaper. I wanted to be a writer at the Free Press. And sure as shit, years later, I ended up being a video columnist, which, was close enough, I guess. And then there was a company called CanWest Global. Canadians will know this one if they're of a certain age. And now it's the Global TV station, but it's owned by a different company now. It was sold. There was a family that had run it. And so the family, called the Aspers, was decent. The husband, or the father of the family, Izzy Asper, was a media mogul, really. And so he ended up having CanWest Global in Winnipeg, and then bought a bunch of newspapers and other TV networks and whatever. So the company ended up owning a bunch of newspapers across Canada. Ironically, or coincidentally, none of them in Winnipeg. But like a newspaper in Ottawa, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. And so the reader relations, like the retention department, so if your newspaper was late in the morning, or if you didn't get it, or if it was shredded, or if there was a section missing, or whatever it was, you would call the 800 number in the paper. You'd thinking that you're talking to somebody in Ottawa, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. No, you're calling the main office in Winnipeg. And so the call center was there, not outsourced, surprisingly. That wasn't happening back then. And so I went into it thinking that it was a PR job, because I thought, okay, that's great. I can work in this area, and that'll be a foot in the door for a newspaper job, right? And this is a company that owns more than one newspaper. So if I don't get, it's not in Winnipeg, Vancouver, Ottawa, those are great cities to work in. So I was like, okay, so it's a PR job. It was advertised in the newspaper. Coincidentally, it was in the old Free Press building downtown. The newspaper actually moved to by where my high school was, as I said. So I get the job, and basically I'm sitting next to a woman who takes calls all day. So she doesn't even necessarily know the city. She'll just see the call and it'll come up Ottawa, and so that's what she knows she's going to be talking about, Ottawa, or if it comes up Edmonton. So I sat with her for the first week, I think it was. And we just had such a good time. And so here I was in my early 20s, early 20s, and she was... I'm her kid's age, so she's recently passed away from cancer, but so she would have been at least in her 40s at that time, perhaps maybe even 50. And we just hit it off. It was just hilarious. She was just so cool. And so we would, kind of laugh. And we worked together for a few months. And then leading up to Christmas, in the entertainment section of the newspaper in Ottawa, there was a calendar on the front page of entertainment. And it was basically laying out certain events in December. So perhaps it would be such and such birthday, or the Nutcracker first premiered in whatever, like just little, facts and trivia. And so one of them said, Billy Crystal? Is his birthday in December? Let me look this up as I'm talking to you. I don't normally do this when we're doing this show. That's why. So you're going to hear probably some typing here. So basically it said something about, Billy Crystal's birthday, all of the funniest comedians are Jewish. And I just thought that's something strange about that. Again, it was, it's entertainment, so okay. And then there was, warmest wishes for Hanukkah. Now, again, the family that owns it is Jewish, the Asper family. And so they had a reputation of they ended up running the company into the ground, if you really want to know what happened. And so this could be why. So part of the job that I ended up having was to, so not Billy Crystal. He was born in March. I can't remember who it was, though. Can't remember. But anyway. So part of the job that I had was to relay. So the woman that I was sitting with, her job was to receive calls and, have the complaints or have the paper resent to you or whatever it was. My job was to take the feedback that people would have. So, for instance, in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, they took out the stock listings from the newspaper. So your daily, the stock market, again, if you've never looked at the newspaper, you don't know what I'm talking about. But in the business section, you'd have the listings of the stocks, right? So the Ottawa paper had taken that out. And the feedback was fast and furious. People were not happy. And so that would have been my job was, we've had, 85 calls about this. So I would then pass that along to the newspaper, right? So it was kind of a go-between. It was, again, a PR kind of a job because it's up to me to sort of present it and go, this is what our readers are saying. So the funniest comedian's Jewish, and then the warmest wishes for Hanukkah, but there was not a mention of Christmas. So somebody had called in to complain about that. And I was, typing up my note as I would, right? And then sending the email. And so what I did was I had added my thoughts to that. And I just said, I looked at the paper. We have it here, obviously. And I said, I kind of agree that, there's this whole thing about, Jewish, but then there was nothing about Christmas, which is something that I celebrate. I wasn't being anti-Semitic before anybody comes at me. It was actually, kind of professionally written. Again, I was a writer. I was being trained in writing. So I go and, I just send off the email innocently, not telling them off. No, but I just said, I kind of agree. And this is a bit disappointing that it's, it's done this way. So I had a trip to Los Angeles booked. This was, I think, one of the first trips that I had done. I'd gone with my friend Shane. So I have this send off, with the woman and that I was hitting it off with. And so I said, yeah, I'm going, for a few days. I'll see you next week or whatever. So I come back. My first day back, I brought her a copy of the LA Times, the Sunday Times, which was this super crazy thick newspaper back then. It had a string around it to hold it together. That's how much stuff there was in it. So I just come in, I put it on the desk. Our desks were side by side. She was like, oh my God, I've been wondering how it was. Again, this is before the days of texting and social media. She had no idea what was going on while I was away. And so I said, this is the newspaper. I said, oh yeah, I said, we got a meeting, with HR. Now, here's the thing, is that I was coming up to the end of my probationary period, which was 6 months. So I thought this was going to be, okay, we're going to get you set up, right? You're going to be a permanent employee now. You're done probation, whatever. So I said, no, they wanted to, I've got this meeting scheduled. Okay. So I leave the newspaper there and then I go into the meeting and kind of ambushed, right? Because, there's my supervisor and there's the HR person and there's whatever. And I was kind of like, this seems a little bit too serious for, hey, you're staying on the team. And so I go and I sit down and it's just weird when it's your first day back from vacation, which I had this trip planned before I started working there. When you hired, they ask you, do you have any trips planned? It's like, yeah, I had this stuff. So they showed me the email and they slid it on the table and they said, did you write this? And so I looked and I said, yes, I did. We don't do that here. And I said, we don't do that. What are you talking about? No, we don't do that. We don't do that here. In a roundabout way saying, we don't share our opinion. We don't criticize the company. We don't criticize the editorial. We don't. And, we keep that to ourselves. You shut your mouth and you toe the company line because that's... Now, here's the thing. If you look up, right now, you can Google CanWest Global or the downfall of CanWest Global or how the Aspers burned the company to the ground. You will see that, especially in Ottawa, columnists, newspaper people were either fired or people were leaving the company because it was that strict. It was like a dictatorship in some of the newsrooms. So you will see this as recorded 20 some years ago. Nobody wanted to work for CanWest Global in the creative world. You did not want, because again, you'd have to toe the company line. You couldn't have your own opinion. Even the editorial pages were very, your opinion was the company's opinion, not your own necessarily. Go document. Look it up. You look it up. CanWest Global Canada. What the downfall? What happened to it? Ottawa citizen resignations, firings. You'll see it all. So I was kind of like, okay. Now again, not realizing these are already set up that you're fired no matter what you say, right? Because I'd just tell them off, right? I'd be like, you know what? Fuck you for that. Fuck you for this. But you always think there's hope, right? You're always kind of like, I can sway them. No, because they've already got your termination letter that's the next paper they're sliding over to you, right? And so, that was it. It was just, we don't do this. Now, here's the thing is that because I was on probation, they can just, turf me. They can just let me go. But same situation amongst the workforce. Everybody loved me. I was the energetic one, the funny one, the, silly one, but yeah, you go and you have an opinion. I was fired for having an opinion. Like I said, full disclosure, it was, I understand where these people are coming from and I disagree. And I find, I don't know if I use the word offended because I'm not easily offended, but maybe I did just for, exaggeration or dramatics. But I didn't tell them off. I did not do anything. I didn't do we should do better. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. But still, yeah, we don't do this. So just when you think about these 3 stories that I've already told you, right? You're taking pictures in a kitchen, and then all of a sudden, suddenly it's a bad thing, and you're gone for that, right? There's something else behind the scenes. Homophobe bigot Rick, who's fucking a bunch of servers on the down low. And then, be the maintenance man and start fixing the shelving and doing whatever. Fuck you, bitch. Seriously? No. And then, you've got something like this where you have an opinion, which again is your job to pass along the feedback, but just keep your opinion to yourself. So we don't do that here. It's so funny because I actually nowadays with my dogs to give them shit or if they do something, I'm like, we don't do that here. No. We're late. I was gonna. I do have more firing stories, but we don't. We're gonna do a break, or what are we? Or is that it? Oh, that's it. Oh, womp womp. Anyway, share your. Oh, I can do one more. Okay, I could talk about not my story, but all right, great. We're gonna take a break. So when I said about the embarrassment or the humiliation, have you lied about being fired, or do you tell your friends, "No, I was fired"? So I'm gonna tell you a story coming up in the next segment.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
JB here on The Scribble. We're headed to supersized Scribble territory, which means the 1 hour mark. Well, I guess we're slowly getting there. So when you're fired, as I mentioned with Red Lobster and when I was a teenager, that now I got to come home and answer to the parents and explain kind of what happened, right? Or not that my group of friends at school would have ended up hearing about it and known about it because they worked there, so I couldn't really lie to them or hide it. That a firing kind of gets around the staff pretty quickly. But as an adult, right? So when you maybe you're married or you've got kids that you're supporting, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, daddy was fired or mommy was fired. you got to explain that to your partner, right? Because we're going to be, one income short for a little while until I find another job or whatever it is. So I had a friend who we lost touch. She's a friend who is, I don't know how to explain it. We can go for a stretch of talking, every day for hours, and then just stop out of nowhere. Nothing bad happened. There was no conflict or drama. There was nothing. We just don't reach out to each other for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then either, I'll think of her and send her a text or something, or she'll think of something and send it to me, or like a funny picture of us back in the day or whatever it was. And then the ice is broken and we're back on a regular basis. Like, it's one of those kinds of friends. You probably have somebody like that. So I had, she was working at a place and she didn't like it. It was something where she had gone for 2 job interviews. She was looking to leave her job. She had 2 interviews. She was really considering this, let's just call them job A and job B. They were both kind of event planning, like corporate event planning roles. So we'll call them job A and job B. She really liked job A because she would get her own cell phone. She would get her own parking spot. And then there was something else. For her, I preferred job B because it was a national organization. It was an arm of the government. So I think it was Canadian Blood Services or something. So it's not government, but it kind of is. And so that one, had, better pay and whatever. But she was very superficial in the sense of, I've got indoor heated parking, I get my own cell phone. Like, just the vanity of it was kind of what was appealing her to, or leaning her towards job A. And so I'm never one of those people who is like, you should take this. Anytime I hear you should, I shut down. You're not telling me what to do. I don't like that. And who am I to say? It's not my life. It's her job. She's the one that's got to go there 40 hours a week, right? So what I do is I kind of just put things out there. I ask questions. Well, what about this? Well, okay, is that really enough? Is that really going to make you go there? Well, do you want this? Well, what happens if this? This one's a this. What about that? And then you do your own thinking, and then you make your own conclusion, right? That's what it is. So I'm sitting here going, job B is totally the better, option. I just know she's going to take job A because she's just that vain and superficial, and like, I'm going to have my own work cell phone, and, and this is different. This was back when a company would give you an actual phone that had its own phone number. Now companies expect you to use your own cell phone, whatever. And I've always said, fuck that. No, I'm sorry. That's my personal phone. If you want me to be reachable and whatever for work-related shit, you give me a work phone number and a work phone. You're not creeping in and putting work on my phone. Sorry. My personal device is my personal device. And I don't even care that you're offering to pay for it. No, it's my fucking phone number, because what ends up happening is you leave that job or you're fired, and everybody still has your work, clients or whatever have that number for you, and now they're reaching you, and it's like, yeah, no, I'm not crossing that line. Sorry, my phone is my phone. So I left our conversations going, oh, she's just going to take job A. Well, whatever. So sure as shit, wouldn't you know it, guess what job she took? She took job A. And so, like a lot of people, they make it seem like it's better than it is, right? They don't want to go out and say that they're unhappy or that it was a stupid move, but everything was great, Well, she was pissed off because she had to share a phone line. She might have her own cell phone, but she didn't have her own office. She had to share an office and an actual phone with somebody. So the phone was basically in between their 2 desks. That also pissed her off. She did not like that. But I have my own work cell phone. Okay, whatever. But she needed to have her own phone line on her own desk. For some reason, that made her feel special. And her own office. Sharing an office? Are you kidding? Really, this is, yeah. And so I was kind of like, okay, whatever, cool. So she was there for a few months and, enjoys the events that she's putting on. She's, got to do these, fundraisers or different members for their association and things like that. And I was like, okay, cool. And this is one of those situations where, out of nowhere, she said to me, I can't work for another Lionel. Now, Lionel was her boss at a place that she worked at for 15 years. I can't work for another Lionel. And I said, oh, okay. Well, that just seems like it's so out of nowhere that it struck me as odd. So then she said, yeah, I can't, like, I think I think I'm going to give my notice. I just can't work for another Lionel. And I said, oh, well, I mean, it's up to you. I said, you should have taken job B. Now, in this time, my aunt had died. And so, our family, I was doing the eulogy, and I was kind of sort of the MC of the funeral. So I was preoccupied, and, I had a bunch of stuff, family meetings and things like that. So, in between that conversation and then the funeral, we had gone for lunch. I told her, my aunt died, and I said, so I'm just kind of working on some stuff at home, and so she said, do you want to go for lunch? And I said, okay, fine. So we made an afternoon, we went for lunch, and it was a restaurant that we go to quite a bit, and normally when we go there, we sit for a good hour and a half, 2 hours, and we chat and we laugh, and So when we go there, and I thought we were gonna have to cut it short because it's her lunch break, right, or whatever. She's got to go back to the office. So we get to the restaurant. We're there. We're talking. She's talking about my aunt and whatever. It's not like I was being consoled or anything. I mean, So she starts talking about her job, but she's kind of like bitching about it even more now. And so I said, all right, well, so you don't have to get back to work. And she said, no, not today. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know. Well, if you had the day off, like, why did we wait so long? Or we could have, whatever. So then again, through a little bit more of the course of the conversation, she then basically had said to me that she was fired. And so I thought, this is really strange, because you were kind of you were setting it up like you're going to give your notice, right? Because I can't work for another, And then it was like, oh, no, I'm off today. Okay. Which, I mean, I guess technically she was off yesterday, and she'll be off tomorrow. So is that a lie? Yeah. But, when you're talking to a journalist, though, I'll pick up on shady words and spin and stuff like that. So then basically, yeah, she admitted that she got fired. And so I just kind of thought, first of all, I'm your friend. Like, this is really strange that, we've had such... we've had some, kind of really serious conversations throughout our friendship. I mean, this is kind of weird. Like, I felt duped. I just kind of felt like, I don't know that you're my friend, because you kind of just, you lied, and you've sort of changed your story drastically in a matter of, 2 hours. I don't know, it was just kind of bad. So then later she goes and says, well, embarrassed and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, fine. I mean, you've known me long enough. I'm going to make jokes, but it's not to, it's not to beat you down. It's almost to make you laugh about the situation, right? To change your mood so that you're not upset or whatever. I mean, that's just how I am. And so she took it, meaning the firing, she took it really, really badly. So like I said, she had worked at a place for 15 years. And so that was almost basically her entire adult life. I think she started working there at 20 or so, and then ended up leaving when she was about 35. So I was still, I was in the height of my syndicated radio show. So I was, traveling and doing things and, red carpets and whatever. And so we were in Panama taping our shows. And so she also went on a trip. She ended up going to, was it Thailand? The Philippines, I think. She's Filipino. I think she went to the Philippines. And we got back, we were taping a show, and so I go back to the hotel, and my personal phone was left in my hotel suite whenever we would go out and tape. So I didn't have any access to my world, right? To my social media, to my text messages, to my personal things until I got back to the hotel. So, because I like to focus on the job when I'm doing it. I don't want to have outside, distraction. So we were out taping something, and then I come back. The tourism board drops me off at my room or my hotel. I come up. I've got an hour and a half, whatever, and I go and look. And she is shopping on this trip. And I thought, this is really strange, because she even used the term PTSD when she was describing the firing to me. She compared it. She likened, I know Bonnie Winters hates that word, likened. She likened it to having PTSD, the firing. Now, it's not like she was fired from the 15-year job, because I could understand that, right? If that's the only job that you know, then that's really devastating. But this is something that you worked at for, maybe 3 months. But she'd never been fired before. So it was, she just felt like this was, it was an emotional toll. Like it was just. And so retail therapy, I think, was the term that she used. And so she just made it seem like I'm just, shopping my cares away. And I thought that's really weird because she needed to take time off. She just needed, I'm so damaged. I can't, and I was like, holy shit. Not only that, the funny thing was that I don't think she had traveled internationally before. So when I see her with all these like big shopping bags, I just remember laughing and going, she's going to pay duty and customs taxes on all that shit when she tries to get it back to Canada. So for somebody who's just lost a job and is totally freaking out, I don't know that she was freaking out about finances, but what I'm saying is that there's a bit of sweetness to that because you don't have another job lined up. You just decide to try, and she's married too, so it's not like she just was able to go on her own. So she left her husband behind for however 3 weeks or whatever it was. She's shopping. I'm guessing the husband was probably like, this bitch better be looking for work while she's there or on the plane on the way home or something because we're not doing this freeloading thing. I'm not taking care of her ass after this. And so I just was kind of like, there's a bit of sweetness that, yeah, she ended up kind of financially struggling for a little while. It caused some problems in the relationship. And I just thought, there you go. I mean, I'm not saying that she deserved that because she lied to me. What I'm saying is, you just have to... Maybe I am saying that I think about it. I'm just, the dramatics of it, lying to me, whatever. It's like, if there's one, lie to other people, right? And that's the one thing, that's also too why I've never been on LinkedIn. I've never put my jobs on Facebook or anything like that because, well, first of all, I own my company, so whatever. But I'm saying if I were working at, Wendy's and then Home Depot and then Walmart, I'm not putting out the timeline. And I'm not one of those people who's bragging about my job. Just like when you see people have those performative relationships, right? They're suddenly in a relationship. Every single fucking post is about their partner and how I love you. You're my baby. Oh my God, my life has changed. I'm so grateful that you're... And then all of a sudden it just stops and you're like, what the hell happened? I want the full story. Same thing with a job. I don't go and put out there that, I worked at this place for 3 months. The public doesn't need to see that. I'm not sharing that with the world. And so, I'm one of those people who will go and say like, well, why isn't she working there? Or let me just creep. Oh, she left this place. She was only there for 2 months. What the hell happened there? Or there's got to be something up. I do. I look for things like that. But I don't know. Have you lied to your friends about it? Have you lied to your friends about being fired? Like your really close friends? I would always think that that's the support system. Those would be the ones that you would be honest with, is your really close friends. I don't know why you would lie to them. Are they really close friends, though, if you're lying? Maybe that's the bigger question. Oh, there we go. We'll leave that one on a cliffhanger. So send me your thoughts on that. Live at jbonair.com. LIVE at jbonair.com. Tell me what you think of that, folks. If you've been fired, I want to hear your firing story. And if you've been fired recently and during during these viral moments where people... will go out screaming or, insulting or, throwing a cup of water or something. I want to hear about that. I enjoyed the dramatic quitting where people will go on like the Walmart intercom and go, attention shoppers, my name is Dave and I quit because my manager is an asshole. And then they, they're live streaming or whatever. I like watching those too. I'm kind of a sick person like that. I think I'm falling into the culture of, I like these sort of little viral videos. I've never been on TikTok. I'm watching them on YouTube. I'm kind of enjoying stuff like that now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But again, the email address, live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. I'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.